All right, hello everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about photo assisting and how to make yourself irreplaceable as a photo assistant. I know some of this can kind of drift and bleed into photography, so I thought this would be a good topic to cover tonight. Also because I was on set today and a lot of these things and thoughts came up. It's like, well, this would be a good thing to talk about. So I love photo assisting. If I could just teach and just assist on set, which is pretty much what I do now in photography, I would be a very happy man. I love photo assisting because you're part of a team building something together. Usually photography is a very solo endeavor, and you're forced to kind of build it yourself, and you're doing everything from like client relations to pre-production to shooting to retouching to delivery, and then all the client stuff that comes wrapped around that. But when you're on set with a big team and it's large enough that it dictates that there's a photographer, digitech, assistant, stylist, hair and makeup, producer, a whole bunch of talent there to organize, it's kind of like this little circus closer to the film industry, which makes it a lot of fun. And I like all those moving parts, and also the fact as a photo assistant you get to deal with a lot of things, especially in the Vancouver market. If you go to somewhere like LA and New York, it's very specific. Like photo assistants are just dealing with flights or just dealing with that. Whereas here in Vancouver, since it's a little bit of a smaller marketplace, I get to do a little bit of digital teching, a little bit of styling, depending on how much budget there is for the shoot. So in terms of three things that are going to make you irreplaceable as a photo assistant, the reason I've been able to work so long and get some really reliable and repeat clients is show up early. If there's one thing I'm known for on set, it's showing up early. It's become a little bit of a joke amongst all the photographers that I work for because they'll set the set times like a little deeper in than the actual day starts, so I show up the same time they do. But showing up early has huge benefits. First and foremost, like really simple things. You show up early, you get to walk around the set, you can find the light switches and outlets. If you're at a new location, which you are most cases, you're not always working at the same studio, you might be in some suburb, some random house that's been rented out. Knowing where the light switches are, the breaker boxes, all the outlets where you can plug gear in, it's just one less thing to worry about and make you look super prepared, even though nobody else would likely know where those are. If you get there 15-20 minutes early, you can kind of scope things out, also figure out where the washrooms are, where the elevator, which floor they get to, which staircase they have to take. If you become that irreplaceable resource on set, everybody's going to come to you for questions and really miss you when you're not there. If you show up early, you can also talk to security or the front desk or the support staff, whoever's giving you access to the building. They are hands down the most helpful people. If you make nice with them very early on, they will give you like their cell phone number so you can call them if you're stuck. They know your name and a friendly face. So if you get locked out and need to get back in the building, they're like, oh, it's Curtis, he was here early. We talked about my favorite hobby or dog or whatever it may be. Establish a relationship with those people because you're not just there for the photography. You're there to support the set, and that means sometimes having those relationships with people outside of the photography team that's showing up. Showing up late sucks for the project because you're costing the project money. When you do a photography set that's large enough in scale, it can be costing anywhere from like $10 to $100 per minute because you've got all these different people's rates, and if one person's late, it kind of holds up everybody. If an assistant's late, yes, the project will probably still go on, but photo assistants are kind of near the bottom of the totem pole in terms of rates. So if you're causing frustrations for everybody, it doesn't help things, and what you lose in a minute might be what you get paid in a day. So it's not worth kind of giving that reputation of showing up late and holding up the whole production. Second thing I do as a beginner when I'm on set, if I'm working with a new photographer or something like that, I open every bag, case, backpack, messenger bag, whatever the photographer's brought with them and is on the floor in front of me. I want to know every little tool and thing that's in there. Because if you're trying to solve problems, yes, senior photo assistants come with like a big duffel bag of stuff, whether that be AC cables, clamps, tape, all those little things that help them solve problems. The photographer also has their version of that might complement your stuff. It might be completely different. It might be a complete copy. But if you're asked to fix something on set and you don't know all the tools available, how many light stands do they have? How many sandbags do they have? Do they have an extra set of Leatherman, tape, external keyboard, all these little weird things that end up in side pockets and things? Getting there early can also allow you this time to get into these little pieces and pockets and know like, hey, they've got spare batteries over in this case, and this is where the pocket wizards are. So going through there and being sneaky to try and understand what you have available is super helpful. Before I start going through those cases, when I get there early, I take pictures because sometimes they're coming from rental houses, which are really specific in terms of how coils cables are coiled and where the heads are placed, which way the packs are facing, all those things. If you just take pictures at the beginning of the day, you don't have to worry about remembering for 8 hours exactly which angle or how that was layered in the sandwich. So that just kind of helps me think a little less during the day and also have a really good blueprint for how that bag needs to be packed later. And also, if you're far away from the bags, and the photographer's like, well, it's in this case, you can flip through your phone and be like, oh, the black bag with the red handles and this top right-hand corner, is this where I'm looking? Rather than dragging them over, it's a super helpful reference point, because every photographer I've worked with, this is a big blanket statement, and as soon as I say I'm a great first assistant, I'm going to get fired because I say this on the internet. Every photographer knows their gear really intimately, but they very rarely have to describe it to other people. So sometimes I'll just get told, hey, it's in the lighting bag. And I'll just be saying, what the fuck's the lighting bag? I don't know which one that is, because you've got 6 bags with lighting stuff in it. So like the lighting bag to you doesn't mean anything to me. So having those pictures as a reference point is super, super helpful and handy. And if you know all these things, you can help the photographer faster. If you, they don't have to explain and describe it to you and say like, hey, it's in this left-hand pocket. You're like, oh, I already went through that. Is that right beside the chargers and your speed light? They're like, oh, yeah, totally. How does this assistant know my gear better than I know it? It just helps the production move a little faster because, again, you're there for one day. Everything usually happens pretty quickly, so the faster you can solve problems and get things for the photographer, the less money the set and production is spending. The more money the photographer makes, the more likely you're going to be invited back to set to help them make more money in the future. Third one, last but not least, is ask good questions. I think being assistant, the biggest thing I realized today on set is having trust issues. Everything gets put down and nobody really takes care of it, so you just have to make sure like everything, you're on top of that. But part of that is asking good questions. Are we going to leave this gear here? Are we moving to this next location? I always start with my photographer, what's the biggest thing I can help them with that day? Because I've done a lot of photo assisting, I can do a lot of things, and I can go anywhere from setting up 8 lights to emulate this picture, the swipe they've got on their Pinterest board, to pretty much standing on top of all the expensive gear and just being security because we're in a really dodgy neighborhood or just really an open air or public space and anybody could walk by and pick up a bag. But understanding which person you are on set, whether you're using 2 years of photography education in a formal school setting or you're basically just a gear donkey, knowing and setting those expectations is really important, so you can, whatever the photographer wants, like that's what you're there for. You're paid help to help solve a problem, and sometimes that problem's security, sometimes it's doing the really fun stuff and doing lights. One day on set, I will honestly say my job was to like clean pigeon shit off of a mural that we were photographing, and like that's the job sometimes. And no, thank goodness it's not every day, but you talk to the photographer, you're like, what can I help with? Well, we need to clean all this public art off because a pigeon shit on it. And you're like, okay, cool, that's the job. I don't need to worry about, you know, getting the right IEC cables or access to this building or doing all these lighting diagrams and measurements, so when we repeat this shoot in 3 weeks we don't have to do any work about it. Different scales for each job, because sometimes that's just how it works out. Don't be afraid to ask how gear works. I think there's this kind of undercurrent in the industry, like if you've used Pro Photo, you should know how to use everything, and that's just crazy. There are so many different manufacturers nowadays that make different equipment that behaves differently. Sometimes it's in watt seconds, sometimes it's in Pro Photo and it's in like values from 3 to 10, sometimes it's Speedotron stuff and you're doing all these different calculations to figure out the f-stop. And photographers know their gear. They're usually pretty prideful of it because it's the reason they have that piece of gear, and sometimes it's quirky and works a really specific way. So it never hurts to be able to ask and say, hey, I've never used this kind of pack before. Is there anything I should know about this? What are 3 things you shouldn't do with it? Simple things like that help you look engaged, and then you're not stuck kind of faking it, because a lot of photography equipment is super expensive. So if you do anything wrong, like switch a dial the wrong way, plug it in the wrong order, in some cases you can blow bulbs and lamps and bad things can happen. So just taking 2 to 3 minutes with the photographer, like, hey, this is a new piece of equipment for me. These questions can also be asked in advance of set. Sometimes if I work with a photographer, like, hey, what does your kit look like? What brands do you shoot with? What kind of software are you using? You can do a little bit of research online and go to a YouTube video and say, hey, how does this Speedotron 3200 pack work? Or they're using this piece of software for capture tied to this piece of software. Can I do like 3 tutorials on that before? So I'm a little more up to speed when I actually have to deal with that on set, so I'm not asking all these questions. You can be a good judge of when the appropriate time to ask them, but the best thing is to not fake this part of the job. You should really be comfortable with the photographer saying, I'm not sure, you're the professional, can you just quickly show me how you'd like this dealt with? And when you say up 2/10 of a stop, how does that work on this pack? If you want me to plug this in and move this, can I move it? Does it auto dump the electricity, or do I need to dump it myself? All those little quirky things that happen with different gear of different eras. And then keeping your eye on a swivel on set. Asking good questions is also helping produce the best image possible. When a photographer is working with talent in front of the camera, they might be very focused on facial expressions, but not see like the bright green garbage truck going through in the background. And like, hey, is that garbage truck in the way? Is that traffic cone going to bother you? Because then you're saving them the retouching time of taking out all these pieces that are usually like a 30-second fix in person, because you can just go up, run up, move the traffic cone, put it back later. Again, do this within your own laws of your region, rather than having to deal with the problem. And it also shows you're focused and engaged, and I play it a little bit like a game, because sometimes, like, if you're cleaning pigeon shit or being security, it can be a little mentally boring. I look for other things to fix that are reasonable things for a photo assistant to be doing. So sometimes it is looking for funny cones and things in the background. Are all the blinds at the same level in the building? Do you want to adjust those? Does that make it easier for aesthetic? Do you want them all the way down or up? Again, you can read the room. Some photographers just want you to be quiet and be helped. And sometimes photographers really want to make it a collaborative process, and any little suggestion like, oh, thank you for noticing, it makes you show that you're engaged in looking at their set and want the best final product. And that's what's going to get you drawn back and hired again, over and over again. So one thing I haven't been doing in my videos is asking at the end for likes and subscribes. I don't want to do it at the beginning, because we've all been on YouTube and been like, oh my goodness, these people are so tiresome, why do they keep asking? It's because it helps grow the channel, and it shows that this is actually valuable to people, and I'm not just screaming into the void and saying this to nobody, because there's a certain point where you get into, as a content creator, you're like, why the hell am I doing this? I sit here Tuesday nights doing live classes, nobody asks me questions, and what's the point of it all? So like and subscribe if you like the video. I think this is a really fun session to do, because again, the prep for this is pretty minimal. A lot of my background is in photo assisting, so if we get enough interest in this content, like, yes, there's 3 things you can do to be irreplaceable, but likelihood there's probably 50 things you can do to be irreplaceable, so I can probably do another couple series of these videos if there's enough interest. Anyhow, hope that helps on set, and this also applies to you as a photographer. You can talk with your clients about this. All of these are very applicable, whether you're an assistant, whether you're a photographer on set. It helps the production go so much more smoothly, and I hope it helps you at your next shoot. Have a great evening.